The evening sun cast long shadows across the polished floors of Bellingham's as Lucy wiped down another table. Her back ached from the long shift, but her smile never faltered. That's what made her such a good waitress, her ability to hide how tired she really was. Lucy glanced at the grand piano sitting in the corner of the restaurant. It gleamed under the soft lights, untouched and waiting for the night's entertainment. Something pulled at her heart whenever she looked at it. "Table 7 needs more water," called out Rick, the floor manager, as he rushed past with a stack of menus. "On it," Lucy replied, tucking a loose strand of brown hair behind her ear. 6 years ago, Lucy had been someone else entirely. A girl with dreams bigger than the small town she grew up in. A girl whose fingers could create magic on piano keys. A girl who'd earned a spot at the Mason School of Music, one of the best music conservatories in the country. But life had other plans. "You're quiet tonight," said May, another waitress, as they refilled salt shakers in the back room. "Everything okay?" Lucy nodded. "Just thinking about stuff." "Your mom?" May asked gently. "Yeah." Lucy's throat tightened. The medical bills came in yesterday. Her mother's illness had struck during Lucy's second year at the conservatory. The diagnosis had been grim, the treatment expensive. Lucy had left school without hesitation, moving back home to care for her mom and picking up whatever jobs she could find to help with the mounting bills. Now, at 28, Lucy lived in a tiny apartment with paper-thin walls. Her upright piano, a gift from her piano teacher years ago, sat in the corner, often gathering dust for weeks at a time. Some nights, after double shifts, her fingers were too stiff and sore to play. Other nights, she was simply too exhausted to remember why music had once meant everything to her. "Did you hear about tomorrow night?" May asked, changing the subject. "Big charity event. All the rich folks coming out to show off." Lucy groaned. "Great. Rich people who snap their fingers when they want something and leave terrible tips." "But," May said with a mischievous smile, "the good news is they ordered extra staff, so we get overtime pay." That brightened Lucy's mood. Overtime meant a little extra toward her mother's next treatment. Later that night, after her shift ended, Lucy walked home through the quiet streets. It was a 30-minute walk that she could have shortened with a bus ride, but she saved every penny she could. Besides, she enjoyed the time alone with her thoughts. Her tiny apartment welcomed her with familiar silence. Lucy kicked off her shoes and collapsed onto the one couch, too tired to even change out of her uniform. Her gaze drifted to the piano in the corner. With a sigh, she stood up and walked over to it. Dust had settled on the lid. She ran her finger across it, leaving a clean trail. When was the last time she played? 2 weeks ago? 3? Lucy sat down on the bench and lifted the lid. The keys looked up at her, patient and waiting, like old friends who never gave up hope of reconnecting. She placed her fingers on the cool ivory and began to play. Softly at first, then with growing confidence. Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, the piece that had won her the scholarship to Mason. Her fingers remembered what her mind sometimes wanted to forget, that once upon a time she had been extraordinary. For 15 precious minutes, Lucy wasn't a waitress with aching feet and mounting bills. She was an artist again, creating something beautiful in a world that often felt harsh and unforgiving. The final notes hung in the air of her small apartment. Lucy closed the lid gently, tears burning behind her eyes. "Tomorrow," she whispered to herself, "I'll play again tomorrow." But deep down, she knew tomorrow would bring another double shift, another day of carrying plates instead of creating music. Another day of watching life pass by while her dreams collected dust in the corner. Little did she know that tomorrow's charity event at Bellingham's would change everything. That the piano sitting in the corner of the restaurant would call to her in a way she wouldn't be able to ignore. And that the wealthy guests who usually looked right through her would soon be unable to look away. The morning of the charity gala arrived with gray skies and light drizzle. Lucy woke up earlier than usual, her sleep cut short by a dream about playing piano on a big stage. These dreams came sometimes, reminders of a different path her life could have taken. Just another day, she told herself as she pulled on her black uniform pants and crisp white shirt. But it wasn't just another day. Bellingham's annual charity gala was the biggest event of the year. When Lucy arrived at the restaurant, it was barely recognizable. Workers were hanging crystal chandeliers from the ceiling. Florists arranged elaborate centerpieces on tables covered with silky white cloths. In the corner, two men carefully polished a grand piano that was much fancier than the one usually kept there. "There you are," Rick called out, waving Lucy over. "I need my best waitress on the VIP tables tonight." Lucy raised her eyebrows. "Me? On VIP tables?" "Don't look so surprised," Rick said, handing her a stack of place cards. "You're the only one who never mixes up orders." As Lucy helped set up, she couldn't help stealing glances at the piano. It was a Steinway, probably worth more than she'd make in 10 years at Bellingham's. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Lucy turned to find Mai standing beside her, also staring at the piano. "They brought it in just for tonight," Mai continued. "Some famous pianist is playing. I heard he charges $5,000 per performance." Lucy's heart sank a little. $5,000. That could cover her mom's treatment for 2 months. By 6 o'clock, everything was ready. The restaurant looked magical, nothing like the place where Lucy worked every day. The regular lights were dimmed, replaced by the warm glow of candles and the sparkle of chandeliers. Remember, Rick told the staff during their final meeting, these people donated at least $1,000 per plate. Make sure they feel like they're getting their money's worth. The guests began arriving at 7. Women in dresses that probably cost more than Lucy's monthly rent. Men in suits tailored perfectly to their bodies. Lucy recognized some faces from magazines and TV, a famous actor here, a wealthy businessman there. "Sparkling or still?" Lucy asked, approaching her first table with a pitcher in each hand. "Sparkling," replied a woman with diamonds around her neck that caught the light every time she moved. She didn't even look at Lucy while answering. That's how the night went. Lucy moved between tables, pouring wine, serving food, clearing plates. She was part of the background, like the walls or the floor, necessary but not noticed. At the center table sat Mr. Bellingham himself, the owner of the restaurant. Next to him was an older woman with silver hair swept into an elegant bun. Lucy overheard someone call her Mrs. Harper, the head of the Harper Foundation for the Arts. The foundation gave out over $2 million in grants last year, Lucy heard a man at the next table say. $2 million. Lucy tried not to think about what opportunities like that would mean for someone like her. As dinner wound down, Rick gathered the waitstaff near the kitchen. "The entertainment starts in 20 minutes, he said. "Keep the wine flowing, but be invisible. No one should notice you moving around during the performance." Lucy nodded, but her eyes drifted again to the piano. In another life, she might have been the one performing tonight instead of serving drinks. She was refilling water glasses when she overheard Mr. Bellingham talking urgently on his phone. "What do you mean he's stuck in traffic?" he hissed. "He's supposed to play in 15 minutes. Lucy froze, the water pitcher still tilted over a glass. "Well, tell him to find another route." Mr. Bellingham continued, his face turning red. "I have a room full of donors who were promised a world-class pianist." When he hung up, Lucy could see the panic in his eyes. He pulled Rick aside, and their urgent whispers carried across the room. The pianist was stuck on the highway. An accident had traffic at a standstill. He wouldn't make it in time. Lucy's heart began to race. She looked around at the guests chatting happily, unaware of the crisis. Then her eyes fell once more on the beautiful Steinway piano, gleaming under the lights, waiting for hands that wouldn't arrive. And in that moment, a crazy thought popped into her head. Lucy's hands trembled as she set down her water pitcher. The crazy idea wouldn't leave her mind. She could play. She could save the evening. But who was she kidding? These people had paid thousands of dollars to hear a professional musician, not a waitress who hadn't properly practiced in years. Lucy turned back toward the kitchen, trying to push the thought away. But then she heard Mr. Bellingham's desperate voice. "What are we going to do?" he asked Rick. "These people expect entertainment. The foundation members might pull their donations if they're disappointed." Rick ran his hand through his hair. "Could we get someone to play recordings through the sound system?" "That's not the same, and you know it," Mr. Bellingham snapped. "We promised them live music, a special experience." Lucy closed her eyes for a moment. Her heart was beating so fast she could hear it in her ears. Before she could change her mind, she stepped forward. "I can play," she said quietly. Both men turned to look at her. The surprise on their faces would have been funny in any other situation. "You?" Mr. Bellingham asked, his tone making it clear what he thought of the suggestion. Lucy stood taller. "Yes, I studied at Mason School of Music. I can play classical pieces. Chopin, Beethoven, Rachmaninoff." Rick's mouth fell open. "You never told me you were a pianist." "You never asked," Lucy replied. "I wasn't always a waitress." Mr. Bellingham looked skeptical. "Mason School. That's a serious institution. Why would someone with that background be serving tables?" Lucy's cheeks burned. "Life happens. My mom got sick. I had to leave school." She didn't want to get into the whole story. Not now, not with time running out. "Look," she continued, "I know I'm just staff to you, but I can play. I can save your evening." Mr. Bellingham checked his watch. "Even if you can play, and that's a big if, you can't perform dressed like that." He gestured at her waitress uniform. "I have a black dress in my locker," May piped up, appearing at Lucy's side. "It might work." Rick looked back and forth between Lucy and Mr. Bellingham. What choice do we have? The pianist won't be here for at least another hour. Mr. Bellingham sighed deeply. "Fine. But first I need proof you can actually play. Follow me." Heart racing, Lucy followed him to the piano. She hadn't expected to have to audition, but it made sense. Mr. Bellingham had a lot to lose if she was terrible. A few heads turned as Lucy sat down at the bench. She placed her hands on the keys, took a deep breath, and began to play the first movement of Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata. The piano was far better than any she played before. The keys responded perfectly to her touch, making it easy to control the soft, melancholy notes. Lucy closed her eyes, letting her fingers remember what they had once known so well. When she finished, she looked up to find Mr. Bellingham staring at her with wide eyes. "That was?" He paused, clearly recalibrating his assumptions about her. "That was quite good." "I told you," Lucy said. "I can do this." "You have 15 minutes to get ready," he said. "May, get her that dress. Rick, make an announcement that we have a special surprise performer tonight. Don't mention that our scheduled pianist isn't coming." The next few minutes passed in a blur. Lucy found herself in the employee's bathroom, changing into May's simple black dress. It was a little tight across the shoulders, but otherwise fit well enough. "I can't believe you never told me you could play like that," May said, helping Lucy pin her hair up into something more elegant. "Where did you learn?" "My grandmother taught me when I was 5, Lucy replied, hands still shaking as she applied a bit of borrowed lipstick. "She was a piano teacher. She saw something in me, I guess." "Well, she was right," May said. "You're amazing." Lucy looked at herself in the mirror. With her hair up and the black dress, she looked different. Not quite like her old self from music school days, but not like the everyday waitress either. "What if I mess up?" she whispered. "These people are used to perfection." May squeezed her shoulder. "Then you mess up, but at least you tried. How many chances do we get to show who we really are?" A knot formed in Lucy's throat. Who was she really? The talented pianist who'd once had so much promise? Or the waitress who'd spent the last 6 years just trying to survive? "It's time," Rick's voice called from outside the door. "They're ready for you." Lucy took one last look in the mirror. Whatever happened next would change everything. Lucy's heart pounded as she walked through the dining room. Conversations quieted as people noticed her. She could feel their eyes following her, probably wondering who she was and why she was heading toward the piano. Mr. Bellingham stood by the piano, glass of champagne in hand. He tapped it gently with a spoon to get everyone's attention. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, his voice smooth and confident despite the crisis happening behind the scenes. "Tonight we have a special treat. Please welcome our performer for the evening." He gestured toward Lucy but didn't say her name, probably because he barely knew it himself. Lucy realized he was giving her a chance to introduce herself. She stepped forward, legs wobbling slightly in May's borrowed heels. The silence in the room was heavy as everyone waited. Lucy spotted the woman with the diamond necklace who hadn't bothered to look at her earlier. Now the woman was staring directly at her, eyebrows raised in surprise. "Good evening," Lucy said, her voice coming out steadier than she expected. "My name is Lucy Chen." She almost added, "I'm usually your waitress," but stopped herself. Tonight, she wasn't a waitress. Tonight, she was a pianist. "I'll be playing some classical pieces for you tonight," she continued. "I hope you enjoy them." Lucy sat down at the piano bench, adjusting it slightly. The keys gleamed under the soft lighting. She placed her fingers on them, took a deep breath, and began to play. She started with Debussy's Clair de Lune, a piece she knew by heart. The gentle, flowing notes filled the room. Lucy kept her eyes on her hands at first, too nervous to look at the audience. But as the music took over, her tension began to fade. This was what she was meant to do. This was what her hands were made for. When she glanced up, she saw something that gave her confidence. People were watching with genuine interest. No one was checking their phone or whispering to their neighbor. They were listening, really listening. Lucy finished the piece with a delicate fading note. There was a moment of silence, then applause broke out across the room. It wasn't just polite clapping, it was enthusiastic. Emboldened, Lucy moved on to Chopin's Fantaisie Impromptu. This was a more challenging piece, with fast, rippling notes that required precise fingerwork. 6 years ago, she could play it perfectly every time. Now, her fingers stumbled slightly in a few places, but she pushed through. The few mistakes didn't seem to matter. The audience was captivated. Some people had closed their eyes, letting the music wash over them. Others watched her hands move across the keys with amazement. Lucy caught sight of Mai standing near the kitchen door, giving her a thumbs up. Mr. Bellingham stood nearby, looking relieved and impressed. Rick was grinning widely. As she played, Lucy felt something unlock inside her. Music had always been her escape, her joy, her true voice. For years, she'd kept that voice quiet, only letting it out in her tiny apartment when no one could hear. Now she was sharing it with a room full of strangers who might have the power to change her life. Between pieces, Lucy allowed herself to look more carefully at the audience. Mrs. Harper, the foundation head, was watching her with keen interest. Next to her sat a tall man in glasses who was nodding appreciatively. For her final piece, Lucy chose Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2. It was ambitious, normally played with an orchestra, but she knew the piano part well enough to make it work as a solo. The powerful opening chords silenced any remaining whispers in the room. This wasn't gentle background music anymore. This was Lucy pouring her soul out through her fingertips. Every struggle, every disappointment, every dream she'd set aside, it all flowed into the music. As she played the most difficult passage, her fingers flying across the keys, Lucy felt tears stain her eyes. But they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of release, of finally being seen for who she really was. She hadn't realized how much she'd missed this, not just playing, but performing. Connecting with an audience through music in a way words could never achieve. When the final chord rang out, there was complete silence in the room. Lucy held her breath, suddenly afraid she'd gone too far with her choice. Then someone began to clap. Then another person, and another. The applause grew until it filled the entire restaurant. People were standing up. Some were dabbing at their eyes with napkins. Lucy stood from the bench, legs shaking again, but this time not from fear. She bowed slightly, cheeks flushed. For the first time in 6 years, she felt fully alive. Lucy stood by the piano, still breathless from her performance. The applause continued, washing over her like warm water. She bowed again, unsure what to do next. This hadn't been planned. There was no script to follow. Mr. Bellingham stepped forward, his face beaming with a smile she'd never seen before. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "Lucy Chen." More applause. Lucy felt her cheeks flush. "That was absolutely magnificent," he said, turning to her. "Would you honor us with one more piece?" Lucy nodded, too overwhelmed to speak. She sat back down at the piano and thought for a moment. What should she play? Something joyful, she decided, something to match how she felt. Her fingers found the keys and began playing Liszt's Hungarian Rhapsody No. 2. The playful, energetic notes danced through the room. Lucy smiled as she played, no longer worried about making mistakes. She was simply enjoying the moment. People began nodding their heads to the lively rhythm. A few tapped their fingers on the tables. The energy in the room had completely changed from the stuffy formality of earlier in the evening. When she finished, the applause was even louder than before. Lucy stood and bowed once more, then stepped away from the piano. She wasn't sure if she should go back to serving tables or just disappear into the kitchen. Before she could decide, a woman approached her, Mrs. Harper, the foundation head, with her elegant silver hair and piercing blue eyes. "My dear," she said, taking Lucy's hands in her own. "That was extraordinary, simply extraordinary. Where did you train?" "Mason School of Music," Lucy replied, "but I didn't finish. Family emergency." Mrs. Harper nodded thoughtfully. "And now you work here?" "Yes, ma'am, for the past 6 years." Mrs. Harper's eyebrows rose. 6 years? And you still play like that? With such feeling, such precision? Lucy shrugged slightly. "I practice when I can, not as often as I should." "Remarkable," Mrs. Harper said. "Truly remarkable. And what are your plans? Surely you don't intend to remain a waitress forever?" The question caught Lucy off guard. Plans? She'd stopped making plans years ago. Each day had been about getting through, paying bills, taking care of her mom. The future had become a luxury she couldn't afford to think about. I don't know," she admitted honestly. Mrs. Harper reached into her purse and pulled out a business card. "Call my office tomorrow. I believe we need to talk about your future." Lucy took the card with trembling fingers. "Thank you," she managed to say. As Mrs. Harper walked away, other guests approached. A man who introduced himself as the dean of a local music college. A woman who ran a community music program for children. Each one handed Lucy their card, made her promise to contact them. It was as if a door had suddenly opened, one that Lucy had thought was closed forever. May appeared at her side with a glass of water. "You're the star of the night," she whispered. "Look at Mr. Bellingham. I've never seen him so happy." Lucy glanced over at her boss, who was deep in conversation with a group of guests. He caught her eye and gave her a nod of approval. "The scheduled pianist just called," May continued. "He's still stuck in traffic. Mr. Bellingham told him not to bother coming. Said the evening was already saved by someone better." Lucy nearly choked on her water. "He said that?" "His exact words." May squeezed her arm. "You've got a pile of business cards there. Important people. What are you going to do?" Lucy looked down at the cards in her hand. Each one represented a possibility, a potential new path. "I don't know yet," she said. "But for the first time in years, I have options." Rick appeared, looking slightly frazzled. "Sorry to interrupt your moment of glory," he said, "but we still have dessert service to get through. Can you help or do you need to?" "I don't know, sign autographs or something." Lucy laughed. "I'll help. I'm still on the clock, aren't I?" She handed her glass back to May and followed Rick to the kitchen, but everything felt different now. The way people looked at her, the way she held herself. Even in her waitress uniform, which she'd have to change back into, she wouldn't be invisible anymore. As she helped serve dessert, guests who had ignored her earlier now stopped her to compliment her playing. Some asked how long she'd been performing. Others wondered if she had recordings they could buy. Lucy answered their questions politely, still processing everything that had happened. In the span of an hour, her life had shifted in a way she hadn't thought possible. And the night wasn't even over yet. By the time the last guest left Bellingham's, it was almost midnight. Lucy's feet ached from hours of standing, but her mind was too wired to feel tired. She helped the staff clear tables, stack dishes, and fold napkins, the same routine she'd done hundreds of times before. But tonight, everything felt different. "There she is, our hidden star," called out Pete, one of the cooks, as Lucy pushed through the kitchen doors with a tray of dirty glasses. The kitchen staff broke into applause. Lucy blushed and shook her head. "Stop it, you guys," she said, but she couldn't help smiling. "Why didn't you ever tell us?" asked Tina, the pastry chef. "All this time, we had no idea." Lucy set down her tray. Would it have mattered? We were all just doing our jobs. "But you could be doing so much more," Tina insisted. "You don't belong here, Lucy. You never did." Before Lucy could respond, Mr. Bellingham entered the kitchen. The staff immediately straightened up, returning to their cleanup duties. He rarely came into the back. "Lucy," he said, "could I speak with you in my office when you're done here?" She nodded, suddenly nervous again. Was he upset that she'd taken the spotlight? Maybe he thought she'd tricked him somehow. 20 minutes later, Lucy knocked on his office door. "Come in," Mr. Bellingham called. His office was elegant but simple, dark wood furniture, a few framed reviews of the restaurant, and a small shelf of cookbooks. He gestured for her to sit in the chair across from his desk. "I've worked in the restaurant business for 30 years, he began, leaning back in his chair. I've seen all kinds of people come and go. Waiters who were really actors, bartenders who were really writers. Everyone in this business seems to be on their way to somewhere else." Lucy said nothing, waiting for him to continue. "But I've never had an employee with a talent like yours," he said, shaking his head slightly. "Why didn't you say something? All these years?" Lucy looked down at her hands. "What was there to say? I needed the job. You needed a waitress, not a pianist." "Until tonight," he pointed out. "Until tonight," she agreed. Mr. Bellingham pulled out a checkbook from his desk drawer. "I want to pay you properly for your performance. The pianist we hired was getting $5,000. So should you." Lucy's eyes widened. That's not necessary. I was on the clock anyway." "I insist," he said, already writing the check. "You saved the event. Mrs. Harper told me she hasn't been so moved by a performance in years. Do you know what that means for my restaurant? For future bookings?" He slid the check across the desk. Lucy stared at it, hardly believing the amount. $5,000. That would cover her mom's treatments for 2 months. "Thank you," she whispered, carefully folding the check and putting it in her pocket. "Mrs. Harper also mentioned she gave you her card," Mr. Bellingham continued. "Are you going to call her?" Lucy hesitated. "I'm not sure yet." "Can I give you some advice?" he asked. "Call her. Don't let fear hold you back. I've seen too many people in this business let their real talents go to waste because they were afraid to take a chance." Lucy nodded slowly. "But I still need a steady job. My mom's medical bills." "Your job here is secure," he assured her. "But I have another proposition for you." He leaned forward. "How would you feel about playing the piano here on Friday and Saturday nights? We'd adjust your schedule, of course. Pay you separately for performing." Lucy blinked in surprise. "You want me to play here, regularly?" "Our guests would love it," he said. "And it would give you a chance to practice, to get comfortable performing again. Think of it as a stepping stone." A stepping stone to what? Lucy wondered. To the life she'd once dreamed of having? It seemed impossible after so many years. But then again, so had playing at a charity gala in front of the city's elite. "I'd like that," she said finally. "Thank you." "No," Mr. Bellingham said, standing and extending his hand. "Thank you. Sometimes people surprise you in the most unexpected ways." As Lucy left the restaurant that night, the cool air felt refreshing against her skin. She pulled out her phone and called her mom, even though it was late. "Mom," she said when her mother's sleepy voice answered, "you're never going to believe what happened tonight." She began telling the story as she walked toward the bus stop, her steps lighter than they had been in years. The check in her pocket felt like it was glowing, warming her with possibilities. And the business cards, especially Mrs. Harper's, seemed to whisper promises of a future she'd thought was lost forever. 3 months passed in a whirlwind of change. Lucy sat in the waiting room at Harper Arts Foundation, nervously smoothing the wrinkles in her dress. It was new, the first nice dress she'd bought herself in years. Her mom had insisted, saying first impressions matter. "Lucy Chen," the receptionist called her name. "Mrs. Harper will see you now." Lucy took a deep breath and stood up. This meeting could change everything. The past 3 months had been like living in a dream. After that first night at the piano, word had spread quickly about the waitress with the incredible talent. Mr. Bellingham had kept his promise, giving her the weekend piano slot at the restaurant. Soon, people were making reservations specifically for nights when Lucy played. Her first weekend performance had been terrifying. Playing spontaneously to save an event was one thing. Playing scheduled performances, with people coming just to hear her, was something else entirely. Her hands had trembled as she'd sat down at the bench. "You'll be fine," May had whispered, squeezing her shoulder before heading off to serve tables. "Just close your eyes and play like you did that first night." And somehow Lucy had done it. The music came back to her more easily each time she played. Muscle memory from all those years of training hadn't disappeared after all. It had just been waiting for her to return. Now Lucy walked into Mrs. Harper's office, trying to appear more confident than she felt. "Lucy, dear, come in," Mrs. Harper said, rising from behind an elegant desk. The office was filled with framed photos of Mrs. Harper with famous musicians and artists. Awards and certificates covered one wall. This was a woman with real power in the arts world. "Thank you for meeting with me," Lucy said, taking a seat. "I've been following your performances at Bellingham's," Mrs. Harper said, smiling. "Quite the local sensation you've become." Lucy blushed. "It's been surprising." "Not to me," Mrs. Harper replied. "True talent always finds a way to shine. But playing weekends at a restaurant isn't enough, is it? Not for someone with your abilities." Lucy looked down at her hands. The hands that had served countless plates of food and also created music that moved people to tears. "I've been thinking about going back to school," she admitted, "finishing my degree." Mrs. Harper nodded. "Mason School of Music, wasn't it? Excellent institution. I sit on their board of trustees, you know." Lucy hadn't known that. Her heart beat faster. "The spring semester starts in January," Mrs. Harper continued. "That gives you about 2 months to prepare. I've spoken with the dean already. They're very interested in having you return." Lucy blinked in surprise. "You spoke to them about me?" "Of course," Mrs. Harper said, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "That's what my foundation does, identifies talent and helps nurture it. But there's the matter of tuition, living expenses, and—" She paused. "Your mother's medical situation." Lucy swallowed hard. That was the complicated part. Even with her increased income from playing at the restaurant, she couldn't afford school and her mom's treatments. "I've put together a proposal," Mrs. Harper said, sliding a folder across the desk. "The Harper Foundation would like to offer you a full scholarship to complete your degree. Additionally, we have a partnership with City Medical Center. Your mother would receive treatment there, covered by our healthcare initiative for families of art scholars." Lucy stared at the folder, afraid to open it in case this was all a misunderstanding. "Why?" she whispered. "Why would you do this for me?" Mrs. Harper's eyes softened. "Because 30 years ago, I was a promising young violinist working as a secretary to pay the bills. Someone took a chance on me. Now I take chances on others." With trembling fingers, Lucy opened the folder. Inside was a formal letter offering everything Mrs. Harper had just described. It was real. "I don't know what to say," Lucy said, her voice thick with emotion. "Say yes," Mrs. Harper replied simply. "Then go home and practice. You have a recital in 3 weeks, your formal introduction as a Harper Foundation scholar. Nothing fancy, just a few pieces to show the board members what I've been raving about." Lucy nodded, a tear slipping down her cheek. "Yes, thank you. I won't let you down." "I know you won't," Mrs. Harper said, standing. "Now, I believe you have a shift at Bellingham's tonight." "My last regular waitressing shift," Lucy confirmed. "Mr. Bellingham is throwing a little party for me after closing." As Lucy left the Harper Foundation building, she stood for a moment on the steps, looking up at the clear blue sky. 6 months ago, she had been a waitress with a forgotten dream. Now she was going back to school, her mother's treatments were taken care of, and she had people who believed in her talent. All because she found the courage to step up to the piano when it mattered most. Sometimes, Lucy thought as she headed for the bus stop, life gives you a second chance to become who you were always meant to be.